Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. My guest today, he's getting healthy, he's getting fit, but we're going to keep the tacos because you can't say no to tacos. Who am I talking to? Who is this guest? Who is this mysterious person you're about to meet? And we're going to learn a lot. I'm going to learn a ton from today. He's a marketing and AI expert, right? Not just the Hufflepuff kind that just throwing it out. See, I just insulted a whole house now. Whole Hogwarts house is now pissed off. They're not listening. Gryffindor forever. Anyways, an actual thought leader around marketing and AI. There's so much hype right now. We're going to get into it. We're going to learn what's real, what's not real. And in his marketing and AI expertise, there's a purpose to it. It's to grow. And he's already helped 100 companies do just that. Senior marketing consultant at PR 2020, instructor at the AI Academy for Marketers, director of the Marketing Artificial Intelligence Institute. Hell yeah. Mike Kaput, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, man. You're busy. You're doing a lot of things, huh?
Yeah, I wear a lot of hats.
I bet you do. So the theme today, if people didn't already guess it, it's like marketing plus AI. And I got to tell you, one time I downloaded a white paper that said it would tell me the answer to that mysterious formula, and it was complete garbage. It didn't know anything. It was all hype. So tell you what, I'm going to pass you this thing real quick. Hold on, it's heavy. There we go. Okay, here you go. You got it? Thor's hammer?
I got it.
One hand, but you backhand grabbed it. You play tennis or something? Holy crap. All right, so wield that however you want to, because clearly you have more experience with that than I do. Smash something. Smash a marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
Sure. So one big myth at almost every marketer on the planet has heard of and believes in when it comes to artificial intelligence is some variation of that AI is kind of this mysterious, magical thing. And
Right.
While AI is this complex set of technologies, it is not magic at all. I'm a huge sci-fi fan. We can get into that later, but
Yes.
Forget all the sci-fi movies, books, and anything else you've read or seen. We're not talking self-aware machines taking over the world. We're not talking Skynet, Terminator, anything like that. AI
Ex
is
Machina.
exactly. Great movie. We should also circle back to that.
We will circle back to that.
AI is not any of these things. These things aren't real. They're fiction. AI is not this magical set of technologies. It's a very real thing that is having a very real impact on marketers like you, whether you are technical or not. So that's a huge myth that we see all the time. And I understand why, but marketers need to get rid of it, need to smash it.
Okay, so it's not magical. It's still mysterious, I guess, until we listen to this episode. So what is it if it's not this magical, fairy dust thing that is going to take over the planet?
So a phrase I hear often that I really like is it's not magic, it's math. Artificial intelligence is a set of technologies that run on some very sophisticated computer science techniques and mathematical techniques. And we'll get into a bit how this makes these technologies really, really different from the traditional software you're using. But at the end of the day, AI and anything related to AI is just smarter technology. And that holds true both outside marketing in a lot of the ways we're using AI, like smartphones, self-driving cars, your Amazon recommendations, anything from the mundane to the truly like world-changing. And it also applies to AI in marketing.
So it's not magic, it's math.
Correct.
Okay. And would you say it's just another layer of smart technology? It's just another layer on top of it. How is it, you mentioned this, how is it different from our current technology? Like
Yeah, sure. So the way we like to think about it is artificial intelligence is the science of making machines smart. So what that means is your traditional technology, no matter what we're talking about, like marketing automation software, scheduling software, accounting software, your tax software, whatever. This is interesting technology that makes your life easier by automating or enabling certain things. But at the end of the day, it's software that's hard coded by humans. So a human programmer gives it a set of rules and tells it what to do. Those rules
Right.
are really effective to help you achieve something, but the machine is it's a contained system. So
Yeah.
it knows how to do your taxes one way. The only way it knows how to do them a different way is if a bunch of engineers get together and manually update the software. The
Got it.
difference with AI is that the machine can actually, in certain contexts, get smarter on its own. So we can unpack that over the course of this conversation, but really, artificial intelligence is differentiated from traditional technology by the ability of the machine to sometimes write its own rules and find its own pathways to creating an outcome. So if you think about, let's say, that tax software example, your typical tax software is going to follow a specific set of rules to help you do really complicated tax forms and maybe save some money. If there were a very sophisticated AI powered set of tax software, that software would help you do all those things, but it also may be able to use your data on your finances, data from other Americans filing taxes, to then be able to actually recommend and get smarter on its own and recommend ways that you should actually be filing your taxes or deductions you should be making that it finds dynamically without the intervention of any type of human. So that's where we get into that kind of mysterious part that is where some of the misconceptions come from. Is the moment you say machines getting smarter on their own, our imaginations start to run wild.
They do, right? And then they turn into like blonde robots on spaceships blowing things up, right? It's crazy. Uh, this makes sense. Like I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm able to learn from you because the tax example makes sense. And I think because of some good programmers in the past, I've seen programs that go, oh, hey, by the way, we discovered this. But really, it's more of semantics because the program was designed to look for X and Y, right? It's doing what it's told. Now they maybe already presented it like, oh, look, we discovered this, or, we crunched this data and we found this pattern, but it was told to look for that pattern. And, if this, then that. Whereas
Yeah,
it sounds like with the addition of AI, we it's discovering these patterns. It's discovering, I don't want to say loopholes, but maybe it's discovering like a tax best practice that, oh, interesting. My accountants didn't discover this, but I noticed that everyone else that took advantage of this 401k thing were able to do this thing. Interesting. Let's suggest that here. And it wasn't necessarily asked to do that.
that's a perfect way of putting it.
Okay.
And um, maybe another good example to think about is think about Google Maps on your phone. This
Okay.
is very sophisticated artificial intelligence. When you are in your car and you say, "Okay, I got to go to a relative's house. I haven't been there in a while. Plot me a route." There is no programmer sitting behind a screen somewhere at Google headquarters plotting that route for you. The
Good
machine
point.
does it itself in real time. And it's so sophisticated at this point that it will actually change your route while you're driving if it detects an accident up ahead or a road closure or something like that. This is not static information. This is the machine taking in data in near real time to then plot a pathway, in this case, a literal pathway to your destination using its smarter artificial intelligence and some machine learning techniques.
Well, no, that got a little confusing though, because isn't it just programmed to get me along the roads from A to B? Like what's the AI part of it? Or is it just the fact that it's creating the route and no one gave it a route in the beginning?
That's exactly it. That second part,
Okay.
because at the end of the day, both traditional technology and AI are they have goals, right? The
Yeah.
goal is to help you file your taxes, get you to your destination, whatever. Every machine has a goal. And this is where we get away from the magic part. There's no
Okay.
machine out there, to my knowledge, that's going to invent its own goals and decide to take over the world or take a
Oh,
day off or
right.
whatever. Humans are always giving it an outcome to solve for. The big difference is that traditional technology can only solve for the outcome in the way the humans have told it to. because the humans have already solved for it. So the engineers have already solved your problem. They've just hard coded the solution into a machine so it can do it at scale without the engineers doing it every time. Whereas artificial intelligence can actually find its own pathways to the goal, some of which may actually be better than what engineers could come up with.
Got it. What would be Google Maps without AI? How would that function?
Like MapQuest, probably.
I remember MapQuest, but like what's the difference? Like if you were to like strip out finding its own pathway.
Here's actually a great example. As someone who I hate to say I'm getting old enough to have used MapQuest back in high school, where I would go on my desktop computer,
Yeah.
since I have a smartphone, type in my destination, literally print out directions. One time I did it, and one route it found, the road didn't exist. The road had been demolished 6 months before. So I literally went, took a turn, and there was no road.
Right.
So this happened relatively frequently, not that long ago. This was at that point, maybe 15 years ago. So in that sense, it's really just a machine plotting out a series of predetermined steps a little faster than a human would. So it's better than a traditional map, right? You
Yeah.
know, you don't have to sit there with a pen and paper, figure out where you're going. So software has its role and can actually make that process faster by automating it. But in terms of artificial intelligence, you're talking about a whole different level of capabilities, like those capabilities I talked about, where you are plotting the route in real time. It's taking in new data on road closures, cops, traffic, construction, even small changes in traffic. Have you ever seen on your phone Google Maps saying something like, oh, hey, there's actually a faster route available. Do you want to take it? That's
Right.
all based on real time data. It's looking at traffic data and saying, oh, there's a bit of a traffic jam up there. I've actually found a better path to the destination than the one that I had initially plotted.
Right. Right. Okay. So the MapQuest is spitting out. I mean, would you still consider MapQuest having some AI to it as well? Because it's still dynamically giving you a route. Or
Yeah, maybe today it might. I'm not super. I think back in the day, you would kind of just type in a destination, it would find a route for you, and then that's it, right? It's been
gotcha.
optimized for kind of one thing, which is, hey, find this guy a route to whatever address he types in based on commonly used roads, based on whatever map data they're using, and that's about it. Now, today, I actually don't know if MapQuest is still around.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
I don't even.
that,
Yeah.
but today they probably do. They would have to. I would imagine there would be no way to get around it.
Right. But I guess either or, like the map situation is it's thinking you're just giving it parameters. Here are the roads. Here are things to think about: closures, new data points like traffic or cops or whatever if it's ways, and then continue to think about the best route is taking new input in and continuing to it's finding its own path
Yeah,
versus like at
exactly.
your point you had to have it programmed in advance
Yeah,
to
and I think
every
another way
route.
to think about this, the path comment you made is perfect. It's finding its own path, whereas traditional software really can't at the end of the day. And all this comes down to what AI is designed for, which is prediction. Really, at the end of the day, AI systems, AI powered technologies, they're what we might consider prediction machines. So
Okay.
AI is taking historical data, making inferences from that data, and then predicting what comes next. So, like in your Google Maps example, it's predicting,
Got
okay,
it.
I think I have a high degree of confidence this route is going to be faster than anything else based on the data I saw 5 seconds ago about
Right.
traffic jams, construction.
Right. So that really is the magic where it's continuing to predict for it's the prediction side that we should focus on. It's the fact that it's looking for patterns, maybe it's looking for patterns and it's saying, calculating them out, you should go this way. And it's helping us dynamically change all that.
Yeah, exactly. Every AI system, or at least true AI system on the planet, is making a prediction in some way. whether that's something as simple as what product you might want to buy next or what content you want to see, to what map route you want to go. Even self-driving cars, they're making predictions. They're just doing them extremely fast at microsecond levels in real time. They're predicting, oh, I think that's a stop sign. And you have to make sure the predictions of these machines are accurate enough to be usable. So a self-driving car is a great example. There's almost nothing that a self-driving car sees that it's going to be 100%. There's no 100% prediction, right?
Right.
Because then we'd be seeing the future essentially.
Right.
We'd be
Right.
getting to like Minority Report
Minority
territory.
Report, exactly.
but the goal is to get the model, the prediction that the AI provides, good enough that it's such a high degree of confidence that you're never going to have these kind of edge cases that occur where, some random 1 in a billion chance occurrence happens that breaks the model.
Right. Okay. Now, do, is there a scale of how much something is AI, or is it more of like an on-off switch? Because when I think about, the extreme examples of like something thinking on its own or figuring stuff out on its own, um, if Google Maps was like truly AI, would it have to then be looking at all sorts of other data points it's connected to and go, oh, look, if the clouds are coming or if the weather's coming, like, nobody programmed it to do that, but it sort of reached out on its own? Or do you still need to give it, is that like more of a misnomer where you still need to give it a lot of the inputs and data? It's not just randomly deciding that, like, I need to look at what kind of cars are on this thing, so I'm going to tap into all the video cameras and like going beyond its bubble.
That's a really good question. So to my knowledge, and as a non-programmer, data scientist, or machine learning engineer,
Yeah.
to my knowledge, artificial intelligence systems today they still need you to give them or tell them what data to be looking at.
Right.
Where some of the really weird kind of mystery can happen is that based on a data set, which can have billions of data points, your artificial intelligence may be looking at things that really weird you out, or that you're like, why is it even caring about that? And it turns out there's some type of signal actually buried in the noise
Mm-hmm.
that humans never even saw. So that's where you get these kind of crazy stories about outcomes with AI optimizing towards a goal based on certain factors that you didn't even realize, oh my God, like that actually has a huge effect on
Right.
what performance we're trying to achieve here.
The cost of milk tying into the stock market. I'm sure our financial friends have
Exactly.
been looking at this for decades. Please, supercomputer, tell us, where's the Wonka bar, and
Yeah.
what is the secret to a higher stock price? Look at
Fi-
it for us.
Finance is definitely an industry to always watch with this stuff, because
Yeah,
they were using this probably starting back in the 80s. Honestly, they're always
interesting.
very far ahead because the money is there
The money's
to
there. Yeah,
give you
interesting.
any advantage you get in that field can be worth billions. So they're willing to invest more often than a lot of other industries.
Smart. Question. I've heard AI described as like there's augmented intelligence and there's artificial intelligence. Is there a difference to you? Do you see it used differently? And
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of different terms that everyone is throwing around. Like I've heard
yeah,
everything from like cognitive computing to augmented intelligence to artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence seems to be the most widely used term, though it is just so ill-defined. I mean,
yeah,
honestly, we joke, but it's true. You can ask 10 people what it means that know what they're talking about, and you could get 10 pretty different answers, honestly.
I'm
So
sure.
that's why we stick to that like making machines smart definition. But in
Yeah.
terms of augmented intelligence, it's not really a term we use too often, not to say it's not valid. We more think about either true AI being the things we just talked about, these prediction machines. Then we also more and more are thinking about a category we tend to call intelligent automation, which is, this gets into a big gray area of a lot of technologies that are smarter than your typical software, but we wouldn't really consider them learning on their own, let's say.
Yeah. And I bet you us marketers have, it's funny, AI versus IA. And I guess we've kind of flipped the definition to meet our purposes. You know, if we have just a subroutine or something in our software that is a little bit helpful, showing you A and B, you're like, oh yeah, it's AI, it's predicting, but
Mhm.
technically it's not actually learn. It's just a jazzed up way of referring to one of your features in your software.
Well, yeah, as a marketer, I can tell you which term I would rather use. I'd rather call something AI than like intelligent automation. But
Right.
a big reason we actually make the distinction more and more is because our whole thing at Marketing AI Institute was started because we, as marketers who were also running full time a marketing agency, were trying to understand this technology. And the further we dug into it, the more we realized there was no consistency in the terms being used. Unfortunately, a lot of vendors say things are AI that aren't actually AI.
Yeah.
And the true danger isn't that people are misinforming you intentionally, though that can happen like in any industry. It's more that there's a lot of marketing and salespeople, both
Mm,
in that are evangelists and working for vendors that don't know enough about AI. They just take, whatever has been said at meetings or on the website where, a founder or something is saying, hey, we use AI across our products. And really, at the end of the day, when you get on calls with these people and ask them, about the nuts and bolts of it, it's very clear they don't really have a good understanding of what the technology is in the first place. It's kind of
yeah.
like it's not really their fault. Like we're trying to push
Right.
for industry education broadly so that we don't run into this problem 5 years from now. It's not really their fault. They're not sitting around saying like, "Oh, how can I call this AI when it's not?" It's more they just genuinely don't know all the nuances of it.
Right.
Which, like any new technology, they've got day jobs. Everyone's busy. Like that's kind of why we started what we started, is to make it more accessible and approachable as a topic so that marketers, especially like non-programmer marketers like myself, who may be very tech savvy but don't have
Right.
computer science background, can actually understand what this stuff is, how to use it, and how to demystify a lot of it.
Right. Okay. AI, IA. I think what's happening here too is IA, which we said was the intelligent automation, sounds like something I could understand. Artificial intelligence sounds like something mysterious before this podcast, almost like maybe if people are told that, to your point, they just pass on the message. They're just saying, oh
Yeah,
yeah, this thing has AI. Don't know what it is. I haven't looked inside the hood. I just know that that's what someone said. Cool, neat,
right.
guys, neat. And you just like what we do, you just put it on the all the collateral and go to town with it. But also there's probably the allure of that to the customer too. I think if I tried to sell the customer, I'm flipping back and forth here. If I tried to sell the customer intelligent automation, they would be like, yeah, tell me more about that. What makes it intelligent? Whereas if I'm like,
Yeah,
this uses AI technology, the latest, greatest, and they're like, ooh, cool. I won't touch it. I don't want to get into the hood there. I don't want to look at the engine. I just neat. Guys, this has AI. We should buy it, you know?
right. Yeah, I feel like that's exactly how it actually plays out. Is we see a lot of people that either go down that road where they say, oh, because it has AI, it justifies spending all this money on it,
Yeah.
without first thinking, do you actually need it? Because as a huge marketing AI guy myself, I'll be the first to tell you, you don't always need artificial intelligence at all. Like
Mm,
sometimes you're not going to need it for certain things. So they either do that or they say, oh, AI, that's kind of crazy and scary. I'm not going anywhere near it. When their competitors who took time to actually figure it out are going to just absolutely eat their lunch.
right. 2 points there. One, there's the allure of it, and what can you do if marketers, we're gonna push, and I mean, but we need to be more informed so that we're being true to our word here, so that we're saying it's AI if it is, and if it's not, let's use different words for it. Because then that gets kind of the gray hat area where you're like, well, you're not really. But tell me more about that. That you said you don't always need it. Is that like sacrilege for you to say? Is your institute
You
going
know,
to punish
I
you and lock you in the AI room for a week?
oh boy, that would be bad. I, I certainly hope it's not sacrilege. It's like any marketing technology. I would
Yeah.
say, we're partners with a number of other marketing technology companies. And really, at the end of the day, if a client comes to me and says, here's my use case, and you can use the technology for it, I'm going to recommend the technology all day because it will make your operations more efficient and it will help increase revenue. There's going to be some use cases today that artificial intelligence, just because someone says it's AI for whatever,
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean you should use it. In some cases, it doesn't necessarily mean you can use it. There's definitely limitations because this all runs on data. You have to actually pay very close attention. And this is a whole other can of worms and skill for marketers that they're going to have to develop, is understanding what data you have, what data the tool needs to function, and how to get the most out of it, and if you can even use it in the first place. So as
Okay.
these machines are making predictions, they're using data to do it. And if you don't have the right data or enough data or good data, the machine won't work. So
Right.
the model will not work. It will not do what's advertised. And you probably wouldn't even get to that point. They probably just wouldn't even sell it to you. But at the end of the day, you do need to understand there are certain use cases for artificial intelligence. There's certain contexts in which you absolutely should be using it. There's others where you should be considering it, but it's really going to be case by case based on the organization, the internal structure of teams and talent
Yeah.
and what resources you have available. So it gets really messy really quick, but where it may be messy, there's also a huge amount of opportunities for the people that actually take the time to figure it out.
Got it. I want to get to the data in a second. What you've brought up here is, there's a lot of technology, especially marketing technology, saying AI now. So for the marketers listening, um, do you I know you just said how complicated it is. Do you have like a sniff test? Like, how can you tell? And maybe you throw out some use cases at us so we can kind of formulate some data points here. But if you look at some tool that I just would like present to you and say, this new reporting thing has AI, or this new PPC tool is AI driven, like, is there certain, like, how could you tell yourself? And then what kind of tips would you give us to be able to figure out if this is really what it should be? And if we even need that thing to be it, might help too.
Sure. So the first question I would ask of any vendor or of any tool is, are there any scenarios where the machine gets smarter on its own? That's number one. If the answer is no, it requires humans to train it all the time, every time, you're probably not looking at artificial intelligence. Now, again, these terms are super murky, so maybe we're talking like very low AI or maybe intelligent automation.
Yeah.
We get into the weeds very quickly there, but you're not really looking at AI in terms of the transformative technology that we talk about a lot. When we
Right.
talk about this being transformative and having a potentially unprecedented impact on your operations, we're talking about systems that learn on their
Right. And you probably want to get
own.
that in writing because you know how sales is.
Right.
Yeah, this learns on its own, my
Yeah.
friend.
While they're hiring a machine learning engineer like furiously while they're to
Right.
build that feature.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's like
Um,
two available.
so that's the first question I would
Okay.
ask. And you got to be careful. And we can also get into a lot of tips around kind of vetting and buying the technology, but you do have to be a little careful to understand further if the answer is yes to that question, to figure out which pieces of the technology are actually getting smarter. Because I think you had mentioned, and it's a great point, there could be like one feature that uses artificial intelligence, and that's cool, but that might also be used as a way to say, hey, our entire tool is using artificial
That's a good point.
intelligence. So you have to, like any big technology research project or implementation, you got to bring that same kind of, I hate to say cynicism, but like pragmatism to vetting anything related to AI, which is why I started off trying to smash that myth that it's magic. You just got to look at it as technology, and we can get into the details of what questions to ask about it. But just understand you're being sold a product, you need to kick the tires.
You need to get the tires. Okay. Got it. Yeah. How do you mentioned the vetting I mean, that's sort of tied into this. How do you how do you vet it further?
Yeah, so I think understanding that first point of is it getting smarter on its
Yep.
own? And then I think you really need to go in before you vet it. A lot of your work is done before you even find tools. And there, I would say you really need to do some of the hard work to understand what use cases you really need it for. So we write pretty extensively about all this and run some workshops on it. But basically, you want to be looking at what tasks are you doing every day that either on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis that are taking up a large amount of time and resources. And then you need to go through and understand based on your own education around what AI is, what it can do, what it can't do, what is the likelihood we can actually intelligently automate this or use AI for it. And then after doing some of this hard work to understand, okay, what am I actually trying to achieve here? You ideally would have maybe a short list of some use cases where you could say, okay, I think these like three things would be huge wins if I could do them in some fashion with
Yeah.
AI. So let's say I say, like, I'll take Marketing AI Institute as an example,
Okay.
because we go through this process as we deploy AI technology in our operations. And I have
Really?
accounts for that. Yes.
Okay.
So we produce a huge amount of content. Content marketing broadly is like our number one use case for AI today. Our content engine drives all the rest of our success, publishing articles regularly, newsletters, promoting those, a million things related to getting more traffic and leads on the site. So within that, for me personally, a huge amount of the early work of Marketing AI Institute is writing blog posts. I'm a writer by trade, which we can get into. I used to be a journalist. So a lot of the early days was me just writing articles. Today, I don't have a lot of time to write articles all over the place, and we produce probably 3 to 5 articles a week.
Wow.
So that's immediately like a pretty tangible use case where I'm like, okay, like using AI to somehow augment writing blog posts would be a huge win. So we
Yeah.
actually went ahead and started a pilot of an AI powered tool to help us do some of the research, the SEO work, and the optimization around posts because we were barely doing anything really with that. It was more just producing great content, following kind of like a topic cluster strategy, which worked really well, but it was relatively unscientific. I'll be the first to admit. So we actually said, okay, to start, actually optimizing all the content we already have would be a massive win and would help us get more out of what we've already spent time doing anyway. And having some technology, if it's available, to actually help us create new content faster would be kind of the holy grail. And we actually found in a tool called Market Muse, who's a partner of ours, a tool that does both those things. So we're in the early days of rolling that out
Wow.
across the institute, and we may as well use it for the agency side as well.
Huh. So this Market Muse is using AI to optimize content and then create more?
Yeah, so
Damn.
Market is essentially an AI powered content strategy platform, but it does a bunch of different things. So, on one hand, it will actually analyze our whole website and identify opportunities to rank for specific terms that we may be interested in ranking for with the content we've already got. And keep in
Wow.
mind, we probably have 600 articles at this point on the
Jeez.
Institute website. So it's just this beast. And we're a relatively small team. Like
Hmm.
it's maybe 15 people total
Wow.
across both organizations. And it is not 15 people working directly on the Institute. So we're the perfect case study of small organization, not a huge amount of resources, not a lot of time. How can we actually be using this stuff when we're kind of trying to juggle 18 different things at the same time? So Market Muse will actually help us using machine learning identify opportunities to optimize what we've already got. And then we're actually starting to deploy a bit more. They also produce what are called content briefs, which are essentially AI powered uh, research briefs that will say, okay, you want to rank content for this phrase? Here's an in-depth brief of all the topics you need to cover to have the most comprehensive article possible. And here's a bunch of search info on the top 20 articles ranking for it already. Here's the gaps that they failed to cover that are opportunities. And here is a laundry list of all the things you need to do when you write this article to
Yeah.
make it really shine. And it
Jeez.
will, you can actually type in the tool if you want, and it will sort of rate everything as you go. So it's pretty robust and pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone's like typing in market music like I just did right now. I think what's really cool is talking to you. You know what AI is and isn't, and you've given us some tips, but just to hear you say that you're using this particular tool makes me immediately go, okay, they say AI, but if Mike believes it, I believe it, right? So I'm with you on that. And yeah, I check those guys out for sure. You mentioned you have partners. Do you have like a whole list of like AI tools that you actually know are actually AI to some degree, and then you work with them and you kind of like cross promote each other?
Yeah, so on the footer of kind of every Marketing AI Institute website page, we've got a list of our current partners. So much of our early growth was fueled by this partner program, where really Marketing AI Institute is both a media company and an event company at the end of the
Wow.
day, and also online education now, which we can talk about a bit. Really, at the end of the day, our job is to connect the dots between what this technology is actually capable of doing and translate that to marketers who don't have the time or ability to like fully understand this themselves. So to do that, we do have to eat our own cooking. We've got,
Yeah.
we have this awesome advantage where you could very well call us like evangelists or whatever for marketing AI, but we're not just sitting here writing in a vacuum. The sister company of Marketing AI Institute is PR 2020, which is a digital agency run out of Cleveland, Ohio by Paul Raitzer. That's where I started working before we
Hmm.
started all this. And I still work at PR 2020. So we're actually deploying what we learn out in the market. We have dozens of clients that we're helping with everything from copywriting to content marketing to marketing automation, advertising, whatever. So we're
Hmm.
actually like day in, day out in the trenches marketers working to produce results for clients. And then with all the AI stuff, we're actually able to have really good knowledge share between the two companies. So unlike some other people might be writing about it because they've read some interesting books, we read those books, but we've also done this stuff.
Yeah. Nice, man. I love that you're drinking your own Kool-Aid. You're actually using it, and I'm sure that makes your thought leadership that much stronger because you're not just talking about it. You're talking about it. You're doing it. You're implementing it with yourself, with clients, all across the board. And you got an academy as well for training. So if people are like not, if you're not satiated, if you're not satisfied, and we just skim the surface here on the podcast, it's like, cool, go get some training.
Yeah, we last year launched a conference for the first year called Marketing AI Conference, or MACON, and we got 300 marketers to come to Cleveland and learn more about how to actually pilot AI. And the whole goal of year one was come away with a pilot project.
Yeah.
So everything was designed to be very actionable, take you from knowing nothing to actually going back to your organization and saying, okay, here's what I think we should actually be pursuing here. Now, obviously, COVID happened
Yeah, I
and
know, right?
right, we
Yeah.
had to cancel the event this year. And so it's been a pretty wild first half of 2020
Yeah.
because what we ended up doing, we were going to announce at MACON 2020 uh, AI Academy for Marketers, which is an online education hub that's a paid membership for marketers who want to actually learn how to use this stuff. We accelerated the launch of that. It's live now with
Wow.
25 or so courses, certifications. We have both our team doing workshops and courses, but also a ton of marketers, entrepreneurs, and authors who are in our network who have all contributed course content at marketingacademy.ai.
Right. I see that. Look, it looks like it's got an annual membership,
Yep.
limited on-demand access. That's cool, man. And that's I know you've been sort of head down, just working to polish that and make sure that was ready to go. I'm sure that was a crazy process to go live and click on for that. But congrats on getting that launched, man.
Well, thank you. We learned a huge amount about launching an online education business very quickly. So
I
if you
bet.
have questions, we can probably answer them.
Any takeaways from that? Any don't do this
Uh,
recommendations?
the takeaways so far that I have, and it's still early days, would be the technology platform you use for hosting your course content is super important, and you should
Mm,
spend a lot of time up front figuring it out. And also, no matter what, at the end of the day, you really, really need to pay attention to user experience. This was actually a pretty big blind spot for me. I was more of the opinion of like, okay, let's get the right tech, let's produce amazing content, and it's kind of like a build it and they will come sort of thing.
right.
Once you turn it on, there are a million different UX things that you wouldn't even have thought of until you turn this thing on and people start using it and breaking stuff that you and I don't know an easy way around it. It's just one of those things you learn through doing, but definitely even if you think it's a little premature like I did to be thinking through really minor UX details, it's probably a good move if you're going to launch something. Granted, you're probably not going to be under the gun like we were either though.
Right. And people are somewhat forgiving, but not so much, right? I mean, we're used to the
Right.
Netflixes and the Amazons just working. So we get a little spoiled and we get, some app that like goes off in the wrong direction. We're like, what is this? This crap. What's going on? It's like,
Yeah, we're lucky to have a
man,
very amazing and tolerant audience, and we have not had any major issues. But yeah, the standards are extremely high, and I think
yeah,
there's a lot. I think that's another area where we're seeing a ton of valid hype around. Like everyone's doing an online course. I think it is the future of education. But there's all these people. I see Facebook ads all the time for people that are like, oh, hey, I'll teach you in like 5 easy steps how to do an online course. And it's like, yeah, but like, guys, you got to realize like this is a pro game now. So it's really important. If you're going to do it, anyone can do it still 100%. Like individuals could do it, but you got to be ready to really bring the A game, I think.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, right? Oh, I learned how to do this with a $4 Udemy class. It's like, cool, bro.
Right.
But
Right.
for maybe 3 people, that'll be great. But if you've got hundreds coming in, they're gonna be breaking stuff left and right. You gotta have your shit squared away for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, especially if you're a brand of any type. I mean, if you're an individual, I guess you can do whatever. But if
Right.
you're a brand, like you need to sit down and get a
Yeah.
real one for this because it's way crazier than you might think. It's not just about like filming videos.
Right. And it reflects on you, if it looks messy or sloppy or there's a random 404, like what? You didn't test this thing out? Come on.
Yeah,
Like what the heck? It's on
yeah,
you. Um, yeah, people can be brutal, but they've got these higher standards now. So we've got to have some polish. So that's great that unfortunately you learned those lessons, but at least you got ahead of it and you're really thinking about it now and not just waiting for, a bunch of people to break and then they start churning and that kind of thing.
exactly. We got our ducks in a row very fast, and I think we produced a really incredible and professional experience that just runs extremely smoothly. So we
Yeah.
got it's testament to a lot of people on our team who just really went above and beyond.
Yeah, you're gonna have to keep me in the loop on that. Let me know how it develops and goes and grows. And I'm sure a lot of people will check it out now. Now that we've been chatting about this. Man, this is good stuff. Who are you? Like, who are you, Mike? Like, how do you know all these things? Can you take us back in time to like little you? Like, what was it like growing up? How did you get all these experiences? Did you always know you're going to be in marketing and AI? And what's up?
Oh my God, no, not at all. Probably it's probably like on reflection, not very unconventional, but I did not have what I would consider like a typical marketing path. I mean,
Yeah,
from an early age, as long as I can remember. So, A, I'm like the world's biggest nerd, and like I don't care. Like I'm so proud
really.
of it.
I
Like
mean, you should be proud. That's
I'm gonna
nerds run
describe,
the
dude.
world, honestly, right?
Right, right. So, like even from the earliest age, I've always loved like telling stories, like writing stories. Drew a bunch of like comics as a kid. Obsessed with just like science fiction, fantasy books,
Yeah.
movies, things like that, just everything you think of, like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, anything like that. So I even in adulthood, I'm just like such a nerd about it and love it. And so like as a kid, I was certainly like more like bookish and quiet, but like the ability to kind of tell these cool stories and produce this stuff really like in a weird way just made me a bunch of friends in like grade school. Two of them are like my best friends today. We talk every day like since first grade. But like it ended up being this thing where I was like, oh, I really love like telling people stories. And
Yeah.
so as I got into like high school, you know, worked a little bit at like the high school newspaper, um, and then in college, you know, I started off in college. I went to Denison University in Central Ohio and kind of real close to OSU. And I started off as an English major because I was like, oh, okay, like I don't really, you know, I'm 18, I have no idea what I really want to do.
Totally.
No
Yeah.
real world experience. But I was like, okay, I love writing. Maybe I want to be an author or something. I thought being an English major is maybe a way to do that. And then about midway through college, I was like, this is okay, but like I don't feel like I'm learning as much practical stuff. And not to
Right.
all besmirch English majors. I just, for whatever reason, I was like, okay, I'm not sure I'm gonna like be a novelist or something. So I ended up switching that to a minor, and for whatever reason, I still can't put my finger on the exact reason. I decided like after some research, I was like, you know, I'm really, really interested in kind of world affairs and business and technology and stuff. So I ended up switching to political science.
Huh.
And
Okay.
this kind of kicked off this whole other direction where the great news was I was still reading and writing all the time. There's a
Yep.
huge component of that in political science. But I got to like learn more about actual trends rather than kind of interpreting literature on my end.
Yeah.
So I was like geeking out much more about it and trying to follow what was going on in the world. Really, just at the end of the day, my whole thing was like trying to make sense of the world around me. And that kind of led to this serendipitous event, which is when I started off, I had to take a language credit at Denison.
Okay.
And I had taken 4 years of French in high school, and I was traumatized by it because I was
Right?
really good at it, but unfortunately, I had some differences with the teacher. And
Okay.
I was like, oh, I don't want to do French again. There's too many bad memories of this. So I was like, okay, I got to take like a semester of this
So
just
you dumped the whole language because of that teacher.
I, I did, unfortunately, which honestly, looking back, I'm probably just being like uncharitable or
Right.
romantic, poorly, right?
Well,
She's
no,
probably
you
a
had that.
lovely woman.
It's like you can't drink tequila after having an issue with tequila. You know, it's the same kind. But eventually, it wears off, and maybe you know when you're 80, you'll like let's pick up French again. You
Someday
know?
I'll pick French back up.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I got a semester of a language credit to do. All I have to do is pass. Like, screw
Oh,
it.
cool.
Let's do something wild. Like, and the two wild options, like the most different I could find from French, were either Chinese or Arabic. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, Chinese looks like the hardest thing I've ever seen.
Really hard.
I was like, okay, Arabic,
Pinions and all
that
that.
might
It's
be
tough.
easier.
Yeah.
Right. So I pulled the trigger and did Arabic. And
Which is also tough.
yes, very tough. But for whatever reason, I really took a shine to it and just loved it. I wasn't ever that good at it, I don't think, but loved the teacher, became very close with her, and ended up taking like 4 semesters of Arabic.
Wow.
And the reason I mention all this is because I always knew the only thing I ever knew about like direction in college or in like early life was I knew I wanted to travel abroad if
Yeah.
I could. So when it came time to do that, and I was blessed enough to be able to do that, you know, you kind of pick what place you want to go based on, at least at the time, like there was only a select group of places you could go
It's
through
like a
like
semester abroad kind of thing where you can just go. Okay, with the
exactly.
school.
You would
Yeah.
study at another university, and it's
Nice.
all based on like ties to your university. So there was like a limited number of options. And I was like, well, I may as well go somewhere I can actually use this language stuff. So the two choices I had were Cairo, Egypt, or Amman, Jordan. And I was like,
Wow.
all right, I'm just going to pick Cairo because, like, knowing nothing about it, I was like, pyramids sounds great.
Yeah, yeah. Museums, pyramids. I mean,
Right.
wow.
So, and I, loved like Indiana Jones movies and stuff
Of
like that. It was
course,
the dumbest reason ever to make like
completely
life
accurate, I'm sure.
decisions.
To,
So I ended up studying abroad in Cairo for a semester. And the reason I mention that is because after I graduated, I actually moved back to Cairo to continue
wow.
studying Arabic, because I was thinking at that point maybe I would do something with like the State Department or in government, something like that.
Yeah.
And I ended up staying in Cairo for about 2 years until unfortunately, the Egyptian Revolution happened while I was there. It like
No
happened
kidding, dude.
down the street from me, which was interesting. So I made it through. At that point, I was living and working there. So I actually picked up a job as like a journalist at a couple English language magazines. Nothing crazy. It wasn't
Right.
like war reporting. It was like business, finance, general interest. Met a cool group of people. Really enjoyed editing and writing. Um, Realized, okay, like there are different ways to use this skill, like that I don't have to
Yeah.
like not write anymore. That's my thing. I love writing in any context. So that was really awesome. I was like, okay, like I could do this job as a journalist or writer, whatever. I was kind of making my way there, and then the revolution happens after a huge amount of like tear gas, people getting shot with rubber bullets, tanks outside, jets flying over. I was like, I gotta call it. I gotta go home.
Wait,
I
wait.
made it
Okay.
through.
At what point do you decide that enough is enough? Because you're like in a
Uh,
foreign country.
the sad thing is, at that age and at that time, I wouldn't have left if my parents were not losing their minds.
Oh,
I made
really?
it.
How old were you?
They were like on day one. So the way it went down is I basically lived very close to the epicenter of where everything went down. And, like the central square in Cairo is being occupied for weeks at a time, essentially by protesters. And at one point, it just like there was no internet at all. They shut down internet across the city so that like protesters
Right.
couldn't coordinate and stuff. And the only place to get internet was this like 5-star hotel. So me and my friends just moved into it for a few days to get, because we like had to call home. We had to figure out like what
Yeah.
we were doing. And so this hotel is like tanks outside, jets buzzing over, because it's like the one last place a bunch of foreigners are in Cairo. The whole place runs on tourism. So they're like, all right, we'll put the tanks outside there, I guess. I don't know.
And
So
I
it was,
wonder if that doesn't even like draw people in thinking that they need
I
to.
know, right? It was
Yeah.
pretty like locked down. So that was like probably 10 days into the revolution, because I was like wanting to stay and see what happened and experience it more, even though it was kind of scary. But then, once I got in touch with my parents, they were like really, really worried, rightly so. Like
Yeah. You're
at the
just like
time,
a
what
college grad. You're like, guys, this is exciting. They're like,
right.
this is not exciting. You're not in the U.S. You are in a foreign land. But
Yeah.
could you feel it? Did you? I mean, you're speaking the language. Do you have the pulse, or could you sense something was coming, or no?
What was crazy is the wildest time was, so the only thing we had heard was that there were going to be like some protests. And so this was the Friday that everything kicked off, like that the whole thing just went from 0 to 100 in a day. And me and a buddy of mine, there was no indication on our end any of
Yeah.
this was going to happen. So we actually said, okay, we actually just heard there were going to be some protests. We were like, oh, let's go like take some pictures, see what it's about, like what's
Right.
happening.
Did you get
So,
pictures?
yes. So, well,
Wow.
we got more than we bargained for,
You're quite the
because
journalist. What would you get? What more did you get
we
then?
ended up saying, okay, well, because we also didn't speak Arabic well enough to be like reading all the newspapers or like chatting with people who would know what was going on.
Right.
So we were like, okay, where do we think there would be a protest if there was one? And we are like, oh, okay, like in old Cairo where the big mosque is, there's a big religious center. We were like, that's where they always happen. Because it's everyone just comes out of mosque, like for Friday prayers, there's thousands and thousands of people. We're like, okay, if there's going to be anything going on, it'll be there. Little do we know, 3 hours later, we're in the epicenter of the craziest part of the kickoff of the revolution. We didn't get home for like 12 hours because the whole city like went up in flames.
Oh, you like took
We're,
public transportation to get there, but then you're just
yeah,
like,
we took a cab out there, and then after that, we were like in the middle of battles of police and protesters, like trying to get away from running away from like tear gas and stuff. We were like in every shot
seriously.
you've ever seen, just trying to like get out of there.
And nobody's
So
gonna know different. Like if you're just in a mix of that mob, they're not gonna know if you're, oh, I'm an American, like journalist. No one's gonna know that you're gonna get shot with
right.
bullets
So
too.
we were like 5 miles away from our apartment, cut
Right.
off from everything. So we just like made this big loop of the city and just saw the whole revolution start in all these places. It was like a walking tour of the Egyptian revolution until we finally
Jeez.
got back to our neighborhood.
Wow.
So that
When
was
you
day
finally got
one.
back to your hotel, past the tank's still there, you finally got back.
Well, yeah, that was even before the hotel. It was still when we were dumb enough to be in our apartment. We were just hanging out. We started moving into the hotel when there apparently like there was this whole thing where the police, who are all like kind of corrupt and everything anyway, so it's not like a necessarily great thing that they were hanging around. But they eventually like fled the city. Like the protesters like
Wow.
fought them off. So there was like all this looting and stuff, and there were like young dudes walking down our street with like clubs trying to protect our neighborhood. And I was like, let's go into the hotel, let's go where like
Yeah, dude.
the army is, and let's see what we can figure out from here. Because also like if you're not if you're not as fluent as in Arabic as you should be, like you're not able to get much information. At least at that time we weren't. We were. It was just on the cusp of like, man, it's probably like the first kind of widespread smartphone revolution, but like we weren't operating with a huge amount of tech at the time as poor
Right.
college students. So,
What year was that?
so that would have been 2011.
Okay. So we got some stuff, but it's not like, especially over there,
Yeah.
it's not that.
Especially like the weirdest part was like getting like your tech from America to work with like their cell networks and stuff too. So
Yeah.
we didn't have, to my recollection, we did not have smartphones at the time. So we were like, okay, we got to get somewhere with like Wi-Fi or wired internet so that we can like use our computers and like figure out what is going on.
Wow. What'd you do with the photos? Did you like publish them anywhere or do anything with them?
I've still got them on a hard drive. We've got a couple hanging up around the house. I gave a couple photos to people as gifts. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's some treasure, man. You should keep,
I know.
or, do, my parents do this too. Sometimes we'll put them in one of those little bound books just to kind of flip through.
Yes.
My last 2 weeks in Cairo, right? With all these pictures of revolution, but just something. It makes sense to keep those alive because that was a powerful moment for that country for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
What a crazy thing to turn off internet. Could you
I
imagine?
know. I didn't even know you could do that until they did.
Yeah, and I know they can. I don't know if Comcast would be like, screw you. We've got
Right.
subscribers. Like.
But yeah, so that from there, I when I got back to the States, I was doing a bunch of freelance writing still,
Yeah.
because I kind of came home suddenly. So I was like, oh, good
Well,
thing
real
I'm
quick, how was that? Hotel to airport, getting a flight, getting home? Was
yeah,
that
so I
hard?
ended up taking a State Department flight out of the country to
Really?
Turkey, and then booked some flights home from there. Yeah.
Okay, so like embassy type. Did you go to the embassy from the hotel?
Yeah, so they basically broadcast once we got like internet and stuff, phone service. They were doing like non-essential flights essentially, so it wasn't like total craziness where they're like you have to evacuate, but they're like if you want to and you have your passport, come to the airport and you can do that at like these days and times. So we're like, all right, let's do that. So we went
Wow.
ahead and did that. Just got on a plane. They took us to Turkey. We then from there we like booked our flights home.
I was gonna say, imagine that. It's kind of like a partial evacuation. It's not like everybody
Yeah,
run for the hills, but I
yeah.
guess it's because like it wasn't their fault, So it was like, well, hey, at least they're not mad at us today, the U.S. Embassy. Maybe they were, but like,
Yeah,
hey, they're mad at somebody else today. So if you want to leave and get out of here, great. But otherwise, I think we're okay.
yeah, exactly.
We're not the issue today. Wow, man, what a wild experience. So, and at that point, you're not like completely gone over to I need to be a journalist. You started to discover there's other ways to do your writing, and
Yeah, so I think I was still kind of freelancing, doing
yeah,
some like ghost writing and things for people. So it's essentially what you called, just a freelance writer doing everything from magazine journalism to some like
Sure.
business copywriting. And yeah, I started to discover there were all these different ways to use writing, that wasn't just being a journalist, just being a writer.
Yeah.
At the time too, I was mostly a business and technology journalist. So I was following a lot of things around the business model around journalism. I certainly was seeing my bank account and realized like the business model of journalism is not kind to people
No,
like
it's
me.
not.
So I was like, maybe if there are other ways to still write, I was like, even looking at my freelancing, I was like, there's a big difference in how people pay versus journalism versus business, like copywriting. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, maybe I should consider some other paths. I was more at the beginning of that exploration when a very good friend of mine had been approached by Paul Raitzer, our CEO, to work at PR 2020. And she was actually doing something else at the
Cool.
time. She works for us now, though. And Paul was looking for someone who was excellent at writing and could do a lot of content. So friend referred me, talked to Paul, ended up coming on as really it was supposed to be more of a defined content marketing role, doing a ton of writing. So I was like, oh, this is great. And then from there, this is probably about 8 years ago, just kind of
Okay.
learned the whole business from the ground up. I realized
Yeah.
that in addition to writing, I loved the marketing technology side of things, marketing strategy, and these skills all blended together extremely well. So,
Yep.
the last 8 years for me have been a pretty crazy uh, real world education, almost like a PhD in everything digital marketing. And it's
For
been
sure.
kind of valuable too, because I kind of came to it with no preconceptions of what it should be or what I thought marketing was. And so I've kind of learned a lot of good truths about what I think should work for clients, brands, media outlets, things like that.
Right.
And so to bring it all to present day,
Right.
in the course of all that, I was still just like, in addition to the job, just like geeking out all the time about kind of business and technology trends.
Yeah.
And I had been reading a lot about AI, and I finally, after like 6 months of just kept hearing about it, kept reading about it, I was like, this seems like it's going to be a thing. Like the
Right.
journalism radar was going off. I was like, I think this is more than just a buzzword. And so I
Right.
went,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I was like, maybe I should talk to Paul about this and like see if we should be thinking about it. And this was back in like 2015. I walked into his office. I swear I'm not making this story up because it's so crazy
Yep.
or just so weird. I was like, have you heard of artificial intelligence? Like, if so, like, do you think we should be looking into it? And he looked up and was like, this is really weird. I literally just spent all of yesterday thinking about how we need to be using this for the agency because of like A, B, and C things I read. I was like, wow, this is uncanny, but okay.
It's a
So,
singularity, my friend. It's happening.
and so over the next several months, we decided to kind of do an internal research project on AI, which like
Wow.
me and him kind of collaborated on. And eventually we just started deciding to share what we are learning. And that's how Marketing AI Institute, as just a blog, was born at the end of 2016. We
Wow.
were just literally sharing articles that we were researching and writing on nights and weekends, learning more about the technology. And we kind of ended up realizing there was this massive potential audience that kept reaching out to us, like really high caliber people that were like, hey, like this is really interesting what you're publishing. Could we talk
Hmm.
on the phone about what we're trying to do? And so organically over time, we built this pretty large audience of
Wow.
marketers who were trying to understand this too, and also an audience of a lot of people who were further ahead of us, but realized that we were onto something in how we were kind of approaching this from like a plain English perspective and like
Hmm.
really trying to just understand, okay, everyone at the time was publishing about like these in-depth technical definitions of like different types of AI, which was valuable, but we were really looking at like, how do we actually use it?
Right.
And so from there, we steadily ended up committing more resources and staff to it and building a large audience of subscribers and traffic to the website. And then here we are today with
Jeez.
a conference that's on hold and an online
Right.
education business and a dozen different corporate partners, and it's kind of just spiraled out of control.
Man. Man, and as the COVID thing settles down, I'm sure that those conferences will come back with a vengeance because people are needing, we keep hearing the term over and over again to this point. So it's needed now more than ever, you know?
Yeah, we hope so.
Crazy, crazy. Well, I got a hypothetical for you. If you can,
Okay.
I may have a time machine here in New Hampshire, and post COVID, perhaps I'll let you use it. And if so, and you go back in time to a specific point where it's right after you graduated, maybe you're actually in Egypt right now, and you get to see yourself. You have less of a tan or more of a tan, or either way. But you're like, shaku maku, hello. Of course, that'd be Iraqi, but you're like hi, like wassalam, how's it going? And you could give yourself advice, right? Give that younger you advice from what you know now, all the things you've been through, professionally, personally, anything. What kind of things would you tell yourself?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
In a weird way, it's like the weirdest piece of advice given what I just told you about my story. I would tell my younger self to publish more of his work. And
Yeah.
by that, I mean having your own dedicated place online where you are sharing in real time what you're learning, your evolution of thinking, whether it's on one specific topic you want to be known for or just whatever comes to mind. I've done this over the last decade intermittently, but I've mostly done it for other brands and people. Only with really now with Marketing AI Institute is a lot of this stuff under my own name,
Right.
and it's awesome. I'm glad we're able to do it. So I would encourage, younger Mike, like you would be shocked at just the incredible value, even if it's nothing like world changing that you're sharing, of just being able to go back and look at kind of the evolution of your own development and thinking, but also depending on what topics you're researching and writing about, writing and actually writing for publication, even if it's your own publication, is the best way to clarify your thinking. And this is a point a lot of people I think kind of miss, is they're like, oh, you're a good writer, like you're good with words. Like, no, like honestly, I'm sometimes kind of shitty at writing things. Like I really am. Like it's
Yeah.
not that good sometimes in terms of
Huh.
like I get in trouble all the time. It's like I'm pretty precise in my grammar, but I couldn't even tell you like updated grammar rules. I don't even
Everything.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm horrible with it.
Okay.
So like my commas are all over the place. I have no idea what I'm doing sometimes with it. But the idea is that like writing consistently for a decade plus now has really just made my thinking, I think, sometimes razor sharp. It forces you to clarify what you're thinking. And that's where good writing comes from. So I think the way to do that, it's a muscle. So forget even for a second how your writing sounds. You can work on that later. Focus on what you're trying to express and like do it publicly. I would tell younger Mike to do that from day one.
Smart. That's smart. Um, Two things stood out to me there. It's almost like journaling, right? Whether you
Mm,
do it publicly or privately, but putting those thoughts down. I mean, I've got a red book over here where I just the mornings where I do that, it's amazing. It, no one has to read it. It doesn't have to be for
yep.
someone. Um, Sometimes I'll write it as if I think someone's going to read it, but it's really for myself to be able to say, how did that go? You're like, well, that went, but putting it down on paper seems so much more than thinking, right? Thinking about it's great. You do need to think about when you think and then it gets written down. It's almost like more parts of the brain are involved and either gets more off your chest or you come to realizations. The aha moments, I'm sure you've had these too, where you're writing and you're like, oh yeah, that's what I think, or,
Right.
oh, that's the idea. That's what I need to do. But maybe you couldn't get to it just from saying, brain, what should I do here? You're like, let me write for 4 pages and then see what happens. But I think there's something to be said for the fact that you're even dissing your own writing ability, because I think that's kind of important. I think we can get like writer's block saying like, oh, this has to be perfect. And if it's perfect, I've done that too, where I'm like writing something and I can make it really good. But if it's not really good, then I'm like, oh, I need to refine it. And then I'll just stop doing it because it just takes too
Mm-hmm.
much time. So just being like, all right, it's complete crap. Just let's put it out there and see what happens.
Yep.
can be amazing.
Yeah, I've really had to train myself out of some bad habits over the years,
Yeah.
because I think that's probably the number one reason I didn't take the advice I just gave when I was younger, is because I was so perfectionist about everything. I
Oh
wanted
yeah.
everything to sound and look great. And, I got pretty lucky that the things I wrote, I generally knew that had done my homework on the source material. So there is
Yeah.
clear thinking there. That's so focused on like it being good and perfect and sounding good that I didn't
Hmm.
write enough. I should have honestly just put it all out there, or I
Right.
should have gotten a process down, which I do now today, to just break this stuff. I think the biggest thing you can do is break this stuff up into silos. So I do a research silo before I even touch writing something. Like, I need to just understand some ideas and just write down crappy notes
Yeah.
for anything, even if I think I know the topic, because otherwise I'm going to be trying to research it while I'm writing it, and then I'm going to be distracted. Then I break up just a writing phase where I say, okay, write without stopping. I
Mm.
sometimes just rely on like the autocorrect of Google Docs, and it's just a mess. It's like seems like a different language, because it's the only way I've found. Because really, when you're writing, most people, when they write, they're writing and editing at the same time. And
Right.
that's where you get that perfectionism and like rewriting everything. You can certainly make progress that way. I used to do it all the time. But now, just writing that draft, and it doesn't even have to be in English, it doesn't have punctuation sometimes, even. It's just like, okay, I
Yeah.
got to get all this stuff out after reading. Then the magic happens when you edit, right?
Yes.
So it's been super helpful to me. I'm sure there's 100 ways you could attack the problem.
Yeah, but for someone like you who's so experienced with it, it's great to hear, your tips on that and your advice on that. For those that are out there that are writers, I think for me, I found that it was talking and the podcasting and
Yeah,
same kind of thing though. I went back and listened to episode number 2, or 3 actually, where I interviewed Adele Ravella, who's actually really famous at buyer personas. I don't even know how I got a chance to talk to her in my 3rd episode. I didn't have much of a setup. Like this is way more polished, right? And I didn't even know what I was doing, but I was just doing it. But to your point, whether it's the writing or the speaking or something, it was just put it out there. And what's funny is on that episode, I actually learned what real buyer personas were instead of buyer profiles. And she just
nice.
like, she basically schooled me on the thing. And you can actually see my brain smoking and then me actually converting um, on the show and so it was kind of like the AI today, just like brain smoking, but this is cool. And you can kind of see that I can look back and see my own transformations of what I did and didn't know about marketing at the time, just from putting it out there.
That's awesome.
Sweet, man. Good stuff. Good stuff. So what's the future look like, man? You getting healthy, you're eating well. You're still
Trying
keeping the
to.
tacos though.
Yeah,
Can't give those up.
quarantine has made me reevaluate some of my habits. I have nothing better to do than walk a lot and eat
Right.
healthy, I guess. So, yeah, I like to say, I spent from graduating college until probably like a year ago, I got a lot of fun in in
Yep.
life. So I am now paying for a lot of it and trying to cash some checks I can't cash. So I am yeah, I'm trying to be a little more boring and disciplined and,
Sure.
get fit.
What are you doing? Any kind of cool habits you're taking on or?
Yeah, at the moment I've kind of experimented a bit with like intermittent fasting, which
Yeah,
is
me
kind
too.
of
What are
fun
you
and
doing? What
interesting.
what kind of
So
times
right
are you
now
doing?
I just do like an 8-hour window of eating stuff. So it'd be like a 16-hour fast, I guess,
Yeah.
every
So like
every
no
meal.
breakfast, right? So you'd be doing lunch and dinner and then
Exactly.
chilling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. Cheers.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
what,
I love it. It
I'm a couple
sounds
hours ahead of you, so I get to eat lunch in like about 45 minutes. So
Oh, perfect. the Yeah, it's one of those things. It's kind of crazy. People think you're insane if they have no context around it, but
it
it's one of those
happens,
things
yeah.
where the moment you read about it, you're like, oh, this makes perfect sense. Like, I love it.
Well, it doesn't help that, there's information out there saying, and even some programs I've tried and been on where they're having me eat breakfast snack, like a hobbit, right? Like hobbit diet. Breakfast, second breakfast, lunchies too, midday snack. And like they want you to keep the thing going. Like that
Mhm.
will speed on your metabolism, and maybe they're right, but maybe these other people are right too. I think it's kind of also just finding out like what works for your body. And then for me, I found that just like it just reduces the sheer amount of things you're eating, unless you're going to go and hit, 12 miles every day, then you may not need all that. You may, it's like, go get your healthy breakfast, says General Mills, but like, does anyone else say that,
Yeah, right. Probably reading some of the marketing and advertising techniques in the food industry is probably a good way to get on a diet real quick too.
Yeah. Yeah. Except you can't hop on Netflix and watch any food show whatsoever. Right. Cause you're just going to we have to like stop. There's some good ones on Netflix, but we're like, nope, not watching it. Can't do it. We're going to be snacking later on if we do that.
Right.
So
Yeah. Do it within your eating window.
yes, exactly. Although I stick to game shows. Anything else? I've started a little push-up challenge. I've heard those are getting kind of
Cool.
popular lately, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to get 1,000 done in July, which has
Oh,
been
yeah.
interesting. But when
Good
you do the
for
math, it's only like 40 a day, which you can figure out and do. And you know
Okay.
what? There is an app for that. There's several apps. And so I downloaded like 6 of them, and then I picked one. The one I stuck with is Push Up Hero, because
Okay.
who doesn't want to be a hero? Push Up Hero, it's free. And I just pull open this thing, and every time you do a set, you just go to the amount and hit save, and it saves them. Like, you can see this picture, but
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah,
save
I
down
wrote
to
it
like,
down. I
oh, you
want to
did
try that out.
10, 11, and it tells me this week 171, which is not very many. And then this month 777, and this year 777. But it's cool. It'll keep going, and I hear if you do something for like 54 days or so, be a habit. So this might end
Cool.
up being just like a push-up habit. At the very beginning, it was not so pleasant, but you know what? When you like the beginning, I'm like, oh, 5, I can, and then 10, I'm like, oh, dying. Now I can like bang out 20, and you're like, whoa, feeling like
That's
the
awesome.
Hulk, like when you kind of see the improvement over time happening.
Totally. And, as someone who like kind of before all the COVID stuff was like intermittently in the gym doing like
Yeah,
weightlifting and things, but you don't realize, I think, until you're forced to, like just how much stuff you can do at home, even from like
true,
a body weight exercises perspective,
true.
right?
Yeah,
I've just tried out, I've tried out a bunch of different things I've just read online. I'm like, oh, this is like pretty intense workout. Okay. I can do this much.
absolutely, man. I've got a coach named Lauren who, when in doubt, she'll just shoot a gun at me and say burpees, and then it's just like, and same thing. You're like, you do 5, you're like, man, I am fit. I got this. You get closer to 10, and you're like, when is this over? Um,
Burpees are a
I don't know
night.
anyone that like can withstand them and be even like the super CrossFitters who are like 100 in. After 100, they're like done. They're it just like that full body, especially the heavier you are. It's like you pay for your crimes, like you said earlier, the crimes of those double stuffed Oreos. Now you're
Oh
paying
yeah,
for every single burpee.
yeah. Who'd have thought that being a former smoker, going out and drinking with buddies all the time and eating like crap would have bad effects,
Totally, man. Really? So you quit smoking?
Yeah, yeah.
When did you do that?
Probably about 5 years ago. Been
No
cold
kidding.
turkey. Yeah.
Like I mean, mad respect, because I think everyone kind of gets like how legit those things are in terms of like addictive and all that.
Yeah, it was weird. I started. It wasn't terrible from what I remember. Like freshman year of college, you're out with people, and I like started
Oh
because
yeah, the
yeah,
drinking smoking connection's huge. Yeah.
yeah.
My
And
friends
then
were doing
like
that.
it was pretty severe in college, but like, oh boy, Egypt killed me,
I'm
man. Every
sure.
smokes. Like you could smoke at the barber shop while you're getting like your
Yeah.
shave. Like you can literally smoke in every place all the time, no questions asked.
Yeah. That's what I
And
noticed about
Egyptians smoke
Paris
like
too.
2 packs a day. It's
Paris
crazy.
as well was just like,
Yeah.
hey, what's up? It's just everywhere. And it's like part of the culture. And it was like, it was it.
Yep. Yeah.
I could see Egypt, like when life is tough, like I don't blame you, like, so, I
Yeah.
mean, even in Iraq and stuff like that, it's like, in fellow Marines and smoking, like, go for it, man. Like life is tough, but then it's like, okay, the short-term thinking, now it's like, okay, now we're out of Egypt and we're out of other places. So it's like, so did you cold turkey that thing, or did you read any books that,
Yeah. I cold turkeyed it. So
like a baller?
yeah, after about 130 tries before then, but
Interesting.
131 finally.
131 did it. Sick, man. That's cool. I learned all sorts of things about you.
Yeah, right.
Rock star.
About what a degenerate I am.
No, not anymore. I mean, in the past, be like, yeah,
Right.
I have yet to have someone smoke on this podcast, but I think that would be kind of funny, actually. Kind of
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Just get someone who's chain smoking during this.
They're like nervous. Oh,
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind, but if I interviewed someone from like some of the foreign countries, man, it's just different how it's
It
just
really
interesting
is.
how people look at it. And they put even worse warnings on foreign cigarette boxes too. Like,
I know.
your
That's a
head's gonna
recent.
implode.
Yeah. They had those. I think they were just rolling those out when I was in Egypt, and they're horrific, and that's how I knew they didn't work. I was like, this is a really good idea on paper. I probably would have recommended this to somebody to
Yeah.
do it. It would work in like the States, I think, but I'm like, in certain cultures where people have been smoking since childhood,
Yeah.
this is not, it doesn't even matter. They don't care.
Yeah. And unless they've had someone in their family get some kind of negative, they're like, nah, is that real or not? I've seen people, they figure out how to cover that up. There's like they put a piece of cardboard in there or something.
Yeah,
They
I
just
bet.
slide it between the wrapper and the thing, and they just slide an index card in there, and they don't even see it anymore.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting.
Your
Well, that's cool,
brain
man.
gets weird once you're addicted to something like that.
Yeah, you're like, nope, out of sight, out of mind. I'm good.
Right.
these are hell. Well, they have candy cigarettes too. Are you like no smoking ever, or like cigars or anything like that?
I've had a couple cigars, but I don't really smoke them that
Yeah.
much.
Well,
So
it'd be hard not to just inhale it,
yeah, yeah.
which would
And
be a
also
bad
it's,
idea.
it's like, I'm like, man, I'm probably done. I love like a good cigar, and I'll do it like a wedding or celebration with
Yeah, yeah,
someone if
yeah.
people are doing it. But on my own, like, no, I just am like, I've probably destroyed my lungs so much. So I'm
Sure.
like, I got to probably make up for lost time.
Well, you give it what they say though, like 5 years though, and it's almost like you've never
I
done
think
it.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. So are you there? Now you got healthy legs. Now you
It's
got to
like
get
I
out there and do
never
some
did it.
burpees
I
after
don't
this
even have,
podcast,
I've
man.
never smoked.
Right. It's like it never happened.
Right.
Wait, does that mean I can go smoke for 5 years and then not
Yeah.
quit for 5 years?
Oh my God. I don't know why this reminds me of this. I was reading some random Reddit thread where someone was like, what are the best, most memorable threads on Reddit you've ever read? And one of them was like, there was this guy who wanted to convince his wife to quit smoking. She was a pretty serious smoker. And so he was like, it's not that hard to quit. Look at it. I'll smoke for a month and quit. And apparently 10 years later, he was still smoking and she had quit. And I was like,
Wow.
boy, you really shot yourself in the foot on that one.
Yeah, there's some lines you just can't cross in life. Like, there's some
Right.
like extreme drugs out there that you get hooked from one.
Right.
So yeah, it's like the alligators will eat you. Like there's certain things like, nature is out to get you, man. Wow, that's crazy that he got pulled in there. Especially if
Yeah.
she's doing it, man. If you have someone that you're partnered up with and they're smoking all the time, like
So hard.
tough
Yeah.
stuff. Well, hey, where can people connect with you? They want to reach out, connect with you, LinkedIn, Twitter's, all the places.
Yeah.
What are some good links?
Yeah, absolutely. Just Mike Kaput on Twitter is a great way to do it. I'm not as active on there in the last couple months while we've been getting kind of marketing academy
Since the
launch.
revolution.
Right. LinkedIn's a good one. We're just very active on there. Just look up Mike Kaput, Director of Marketing AI Institute. You'll find
Okay.
me pretty quick. You should also check out marketingacademy.ai. That's kind of our main site for AI Academy for marketers. So I'd say that's probably a good place to kind of learn all about that if you're interested. And obviously, marketingaiinstitute.com is a pretty clear representation of all the work we're trying to do with AI and marketing.
Wow. Good stuff, man. We're going to put all those links in the show notes to be able to connect with you there. Appreciate you coming out here, man. This is fun. We'll have to have you come back on. We'll just have to talk like writing later on,
I would
talk
love to.
content.
That'd be great. Yeah.
You're a content ninja.
Yeah, that's the thing with all the AI stuff. I can still love to talk, traditional, the art and science of writing too. So
Yeah. The written word.
awesome.
I think storytelling would be fun to talk about too.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. No, this is an awesome format podcast. Like you're an excellent interviewer. I just loved.
Oh,
I've
thanks,
loved.
man. Oh, shucks. You can come back. You don't have to say nice.
Right? Do you see? I just like slid in there.
Right. Oh man, yeah, it's been fun, man. And for those people listening, if you've learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes, front and back, no room, margins, right? Just crazy notes. If you learn something, share this with someone else. Be a thought leader on whatever platform you want. LinkedIn's a great one, but put your takeaways in front. Put your takeaways, put the link in the comments, because that's how that works these days on social. But then tell us what you thought. Tell us what the takeaways were. There's so many things we learned about AI, the sniff test, the understanding of what it is, what it isn't, the idea of making machines smarter, right? Them making themselves smarter. That's what we're looking for, the pattern matching, all those things. So share that with stuff, with your crew. 80 people, 87, 94, 508, like whatever, however many people you have, you're connected to, 9,000 even. Just share that out. Tag Mike and I. We'll comment in there, have a great conversation. And that gets, lots of comments and engages for you. That's how thought leadership works. So, Mike, again, man, this has been fun. Thanks for hanging out. Look forward to chatting with you again.
Hey, thank you for having me. I look forward to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Maybe we'll do a little Arabic on the next one. Next podcast, completely in Arabic. Which means I know like 4 words, but I'm interviewing, so I'm okay.
Maybe we can find some AI that can translate my bad Arabic into good Arabic.
We should. Well, shukran to you, and for everyone else out there listening. This has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will catch you all next time.